Good morning. Thanks for coming. I'm Catherine Kramer. I am with the Data Science Institute, and I work with our industry affiliates. And Johnson & Johnson, of course, is one of our very active industry affiliates. And we're really happy today to have Amel Lajat here. How did I do with the pronunciation? Okay. Yes. Who is originally from France. And she has been with J&J for 21 years and has lived in at least, I think you named 4 different cities at least, and different roles. She's on the business side, market research. She's now head of global analytics for the consumer division, with a focus on people-centric activities to get to better use of data and better performance in the workplace. And one thing she wants to be sure that you know is that at several times during her presentation, she will pose a question, and she's actually posing a question, not a rhetorical question. It's an invitation for you guys to engage in some interactive back and forth during the presentation. And then, of course, afterwards, there will also be time for questions, and then we'll have some refreshments afterwards. So thank you, Amel, for making time to come visit us today, and welcome. Looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So I was saying, despite potentially having the sexiest job of the 21st century, as the Business Harvard Review said, all of you may think now, will think at some point, but my own personal context may not be as relevant. Maybe the programming language that I know, maybe the area that I know about may not be that relevant. My advocacy to you is throughout the career that you will have, people centricity is what will help you most. It will help the performance of your company. It will help your relevance and your learning agility. You will have higher highs and hopefully also higher lows throughout your career. So what I'm going to do is just take you through what it means very pragmatically and empirically in a context like Johnson & Johnson. Just a few words about me. What I have done here, I've taken the words from my LinkedIn profile and I've just put it on World Cloud. I let it speak by itself, and probably if you do the same, it would be interesting to see what comes out. So let's look at it together. Years, Catherine mentioned, 21 years at Johnson & Johnson, 4 different locations, fun locations though, New York, Paris, Los Angeles, London, not too bad. I've worked in different jobs in J&J. I've done marketing, I've done market research, I've done insights, and then what comes out in my profile is capabilities, organization, acceleration. So that's what I'm trying to do, is change the way we do business through the capabilities we develop. Empathy and leadership, which I think is what all of us have to learn as we expand in our career. So that's my brief context. What I thought I would do is also give you a very brief context about J&J Consumer Division. It's the smallest division of Johnson & Johnson. The pharma division is the biggest. It's approximately 25% of our turnover, and it's about all these great brands that you see there. Just a quick intro video so that you see what it is about. So that's the broad context about the consumer division. Now let's move a bit closer to our world And I have a question to you. If I ask you just this open question, what is your data world today? What is it that you work on? Well, what I've done is I've just looked at the Columbia Data Science Institute website, and what I saw is basically what most of the students do here is around data, language, R, Python, statistical, warehousing. This is what came up from the World Cloud as I've done the exercise with what the students do here. And when I compare that to what I do, you will see that's quite interesting because there is a bridge to be made. This is my data and analytics world at J&J, right? I have three big areas that questions that I get every day. The first one is around the people we serve, right? We call them audiences or consumers. And I'm asked, who is my most profitable audience? How can I serve them the right content at the right moment in the right context, which used to be called advertising, but now is a lot more precise and contextualized. Help me find my next big innovation. And then, all the people we work with want to be cool and fun, so they use language like, help me be experiential, give me some nudging, some geo-localized activities. Sometimes they don't even know the words they are using, but there is a sense that people seeing the change and willing to understand it more, and we help them do that. So the audience and the people we serve, so that's one big area. The second area is around business performance. Did we grow our market share? Will we grow our market share? We have financial goals. Help me convince people that I will reach it. Which of my media tactics generate the best ROI? So we do a lot of marketing mix modeling, right? Statistical regressions. Can you find me $100 million to optimize in our marketing and trade spend? Of course, I can look and find it, but that's the type of questions we get regularly. Can you look at my next new products and make it also $100 million opportunities? And then we have some boring activity as well when our stakeholders come to us and say, can you create the 357th dashboard for me? And we have too many of those and we always push back. So that's the type of questions that we get. And the third area, as a leader in global analytics for J&J, I have a lot of questions regarding organization and people. So can you find the next job of our best performance? What's the career path for the people in my group? Can you help us think about the organization of the future? How many data scientists, data engineers versus business translators do we need? Do your data experts really understand the business? Can I trust them when they make a recommendation for me? And then, everybody thinks it's easy to recruit people like in this institute. So for sure, the best analytics talents want to come to J&J. Can you just find them and recruit them? That sort of states the environment and the question that I'm getting. And what I genuinely believe is actually by bridging our worlds, what is done here in the Data Institute and the kind of work that you do with the business questions that we have to face in an environment like J&J, we'll have the best of both worlds together. But let me tell you a bit more specifically about the three areas and how people centricity helps actually do a better job at each of them. I'll talk first about media targeting and activation, so the pure marketing and media piece. The second area is going to be how I deal with my stakeholders internally and how I use people centricity to better manage them. And the third is around the team and what matters to teams in my group. Okay? So let's start with the first area. Well, another broad question for you, which is, everybody has been talking about voice assistants, right? Do you think they are a success? Yeah, that's a very good, actually very clever answer. The reality is we don't know yet, right? We know 4 million devices have been sold in the US out of 120 million households. That's not too bad in terms of sales. But what we don't know yet is what usage is going to be made of those voice devices, right? We know for now people ask for the weather, people ask to play music, people do basic things with them, but the usage hasn't gone to an extent where it's used to make big decisions, where it's giving advice to people. So we don't know yet if it's going to be a failure, maybe like the Google Glasses have been, or if it's going to be something that becomes core to the way people behave in their everyday life. It will all depend on people and the usage they make of it. And that's the question that all of us, whatever field we're in, we should be having all the time in mind. And that's why in a company like J&J, we've moved actually from mass marketing to what we call people-based marketing. So this is the ultra-simplified version of what it is, right? So we used to have marketing campaigns where we were targeting with a brand like Johnson's Baby, mothers who are 25 to 40. We had attitudinal segmentation, so we could have a segment we called enthusiastic bonsters, and broadly, for example, buying baby wipes. What we can do now with the data we have access to is we can target Susan, anonymized, of course, but we can know if she's in her first trimester of pregnancy or if it's just about to deliver. We know that she shops most frequently in Target and in Brentwood. I don't know where Brentwood is, but a precise location. We know that she has downloaded some content on baby sleep, so she may have issues with her baby not sleeping enough. We know based on her purchase cycle that she will run out of rice in 6 days. And we can know precisely where she is and what she does so that we can better target her. So we can target her, and then through analytics, we can know all the lookalikes of Susan. So people who have very similar profiles, and we can think about content that we address to them that actually very, very relevant and that we can group as the Susan lookalikes. The big change versus where marketing has been in the past is this end-to-end integration, where we identify a target, we can activate content to them, advertising or links or specific things, and then because we have the data, we can do closed-loop measurements, so we can attribute the sales a lot more easily. That's a completely new ecosystem that all the previous mass marketing companies are trying to understand and grasp, because it changes the nature of how marketing is done. So if you think about all the data we have access to today, so from website visits, first-party data, e-commerce, social media, loyalty card, shopper information, that's probably one of the most critical piece of data that we use because we can link the purchases to the people and attribute the sales. But we also know localization, we know personality, we know digital behaviors, we know contextual, weather, pollen, etc. And because we aggregate all this data in big black boxes sometimes, which we call data management platform when we talk about media, or data lakes when we store the information inside of our own system, we can then link it all together and connect it through identity management programs. So that's what we do in my company in trying to connect the data and get it at person level. So if I, again, step back 1 second and ask you, what types of data science can I do to leverage this person-level connected data? What can I find with this data? What can I anticipate? What can I know? And how can I use it? Yes, so I can predict what behaviors, yes? So if I launch a new product, I can know who's going to be a likely trialist. I can know the purchase journey. I can predict who's going to likely defect the brand, who's going to leave the brand. As you said, I can predict opportunities for cross-selling, for upselling. I can target them in the right context. If I know their typical trajectory of shopping, I know when they are in a place that most likely they will go to a store to buy a product, I can actually pop up advertising to them just at the right moment before they go. I can do all sorts of activation at person level that I wasn't able to do before. And that's sort of the magic that we are all trying to explore and understand to activate in the most relevant way for the business. The only thing is there is a risk there, right? There is a risk because if you take the reception side, if you're on the other side and we think about the people we go to, this is what could happen to poor John, right? Having overt advertising about how are your hemorrhoids? Are you still struggling with incontinence? Have you seen the next Daniela still coming up? So that could be not really people-centric, not helping with the longevity and the customer lifetime value of your people. And even if it's not that bad, when you think about the recipients, we're close to that moment today, right, where you're supposed to have relevant advertising on all possible areas. You're running low on almond milk, you can get flight trips proposal to Aruba, you can save on your heating, the room smell could be better, anxiety. So all of that is supposed to be relevant because it's based on the people data that people have gathered. But when you put it all together from a recipient perspective, it doesn't make sense anymore and it is overwhelming. So what we are trying to do is to also teach our business organization that it's very important to have that step back view and that context view so that you actually don't lose the people that you want to target eventually by doing this type of activity. So being very diligent about this. And how do we do this? The way we do it is obviously by first starting on privacy. I'm not going to dwell too much about this, but following not only the legal compliance, but also ensuring that the partners we work with follow the guidelines, that we have transparency and control. I'm not going to dwell because that's so foundational and so important that I hope everybody would do that no matter what. When it starts to become interesting is when you start first to make your business stakeholder aware of the diversity of their audiences. So the average mass person doesn't exist anymore. And that's a campaign that our teams in Johnson's Baby has developed recently where they've actually embraced this thinking about diversity of audiences. So I'll show that to you.
There's a force in the world so powerful. It started movements, ended wars, melted the coldest hearts. Gentle. Gentle is something the world can't ever have too much of, because it makes us kinder, better people. Gentle is a sign of strength, not weakness. And in a harsh world, it's the clearest, boldest way forward. For the life you live, the path you walk, and the legacy you leave, choose gentle.
Okay, just to get to this idea of diversity of audiences and acknowledging it has been actually a long journey for our business stakeholders and our marketeers. And the way we're doing that is by helping them think through people centricity. What it means, for example, is, I've talked to you about these data management platforms, right? These big black boxes when we put all the data. So what we try to do is when we think about the data taxonomy we have about people, we try to organize it in a way that allows us to have this contextual element. So this is an illustrative example, but what we do is we organize the data first based on geography as a top layer, behavior, and then contextuals. What this means is we will know where people are, either, if you are at nursery or in primary school, next to a retailer, if you are in a designated market area, that's the way Google defined those things. And then you will know if people are trying to conceive versus expecting versus having the age of the child, because their context will be very different all the time. And then when you get to contextual, if you know that somebody has problem with sleep, or is actually going through potty training, or is likely to have a child that's going to be teething, and is going to experience the same experience as many other people, then you try to think, how can I organize my data so that I know soon enough and address that in a relevant way? That means that I can do specific content then addressed to the specific audiences. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but we've done work on helping people go to sleep and working with different specialists on that. We've been doing work on contextualizing allergy upstream so that we can help people anticipate a crisis. You know it's coming, you know the pollen count is increasing. That's the right moment where people should be paying attention, otherwise it may be too late. What I loved most about people centricity is this example of negative targeting. Do you know what negative targeting is? Negative targeting, if you go back to the cartoonist drawing, it's about actually removing people from a target so that you don't show advertising to them. So if you know the ad is not relevant, if you know, for example, that they bought a product just a few days ago, imagine you bought an airline ticket, you don't want to show them an advertising for a new ticket that might be cheaper. So the art of negative targeting is to sparing people from advertising when they don't have to, so that we make the world a bit lighter for them. What I have asked to do is somebody in my team has done this sort of mini demo of how he does negative targeting. So it's a bit handmade, forgive me for that, but it will give you, I think, an idea of what people do in my team.
Welcome to this video about negative targeting. Let us now take a look at an example of a new Band-Aid campaign. Band-Aid has developed a campaign for a product that covers blister heals with a new hydrocolloidal seal. We will now create an audience that is set up to capture likely buyers of Band-Aid HydroSeal. This audience is set up to capture likely buyers of Band-Aid HydroSeal. However, known average of a purchase cycle for Band-Aid is 18 months. So, we will now exclude users who have purchased within the last 12 months. Now, why would I want to serve an irrelevant message to someone who is not within my purchase cycle? This way, I will not only send my message to irrelevant people, but also reallocate my spend to the person that has a higher chance of conversion. We'll now send this audience to Google for programmatic targeting. We are able to select whether if we want to be able to send it to the user's device or all of the devices belonging to the user or that user's household, thereby increasing sales with each step. Thank you.
Okay, I've told you it was a handmade video, but it gives you an idea of how they use the data and the modeling behind it to get to direct media activation. So this is just closing this first section on media targeting and marketing, which is through people centricity in the end. Not only we get a longer customer lifetime value, but we also we know we have better ROI. We increase acquisition, retention by rate, which is all the business performance profile. So we are pushing the teams more and more to take their mindset as they develop their business plans. Okay, so that was people centricity in the context of media and audiences. Now the next section is around business clients. So when you will work in a business environment, you will have to deal with internal stakeholders that will eat up your time with many, many questions, some of them being good, some of them interesting, some of them less interesting. And by being people-centric in the way you manage them, you can save your time, your efficiency, and also your relationship to grow in a company. It's interesting to think that marketing mix modeling, for example, has been existing for now, I don't know, it's going to be 25 years probably. And our business leaders still look at their waterfall from one year to the next year by thinking that, okay, I'm going to have competitive pressure, distribution loss, but with good halo, prayer, economic recovery, and maybe general optimism, I will reach my goal. It's a bit super simplified, but the thinking is we have fantastic tools that they can use to get much better at developing their plans, and yet they are not fully used at best. So the questions we have with my team again is how can we get better at engaging and driving decision science versus just data science or just, general business fundamentals. So what we have to do first, again, thinking about people and stakeholders first, is acknowledge that there were three ways that actually our data and our analytic work is used. Look good, so we have to be sort of authentic about that and recognize that they often use our data to simply have a message that they want to show. Sometimes they want to learn, which is a good thing. And hopefully most of the time they would want to decide with the data we use. So you want to have that in mind and play the game with it. So when it's about looking good, for example, you obviously want to be ethical, have the right answer and objective in how you look at your data sets. But one good data storytelling trick is moving from pointing at what went wrong to thinking about enhancing and learning from what worked best. So in the way we've organized and analyzed and used the data sets, we've done a lot of what we've called star performance analysis. The stars can be countries, can be profitable items, could be ratings and reviews, it could be innovation, it could be what you want. But the way we organize the data sets is we pull out the extremes, the top performers, we pull out indicators, we sort the data, and that allows us to enhance those performance, to think about why they've performed, and naturally the attention shift from the lower performers to the to the best performers. So that's just one simple trick to make them look good, but at the same time help them analyze and understand the context of what's happening in their business. The next point is around data democratization and connection, right? So in every company, particularly J&J, where you have 130,000 employees, everybody dealing with different data sets, it's very hard to have one common language, and there is a lot of silo analysis going on. So what we've been trying to do is to access and organize the data, allow them to look for patterns, connect and remove the woods through a platform that we call Business Panorama, which allows us to do that. I will show you what it does.
The future of marketing is not big data, it's big understanding. In J&J Consumer, we are understanding more and more about our markets, thanks to our global advanced reporting platform, Business Panorama. Business Panorama provides a global single source of truth for instant and powerful data-driven insights. It is intuitive, interactive, visually impactful, and agile. In a world of infobesity, having such an integrated platform readily available for everyone is a competitive advantage. Initially, Panorama made standard performance measures available like sales, share, price, promotion, and media investment. Now we have expanded this to include also modern sets like ratings and reviews, social media metrics, and NPD-related information. By using state-of-the-art data visualization techniques, the interactive dashboards allow users to navigate from a global big picture view to minute details with just a few clicks. Is my business gaining share? What about competitors? Which competitors are driving category growth? Which of my Facebook ads is most successful? What about Instagram? Is my NPD successful in the marketplace? What are the best rated J&J products online? Instead of spending most of their time looking for data and wrestling it into the right format to answer these questions, colleagues around the world are empowered to go quickly from the what to the why and devise actions that drive business growth. Analyses that used to take 10 days can now be done in 10 minutes. Panorama is now used by more than 1,000 colleagues in consumer every month and has recently been adapted also by our colleagues in vision care and diabetes care. We received raving reviews. Our success has also been recognised by external partners who call Business Panorama a true competitive advantage. Winner of TDWI's Best Practices Award 2017 as the industry best platform in category BI, Visual Analytics and Data Discovery. We've achieved a lot, but we're not resting on our laurels. The Panorama team has already started to tackle the next frontier. Use artificial intelligence and machine learning to generate insights from the vast amount of data we have. Our newest team member, Daniela, will soon be available to help teams around the world with their data queries. She will even understand human voice when connected to an Amazon Alexa device. Business Panorama, world-class analytics for a world-class marketing organization.
Yeah, so what we've been doing is we've basically been allowing our teams to ask questions instead of look for the data, and that's been a huge advancement for them in terms of being data-centric, right? So that's the way you get them to learn with the data sets, by accessing it a bit more directly. But when it becomes interesting, actually, the next level beyond learning is decision-making. And bear with me 1 second on this one, because again, if we think about our statistical tool that allow us to get to drivers' duties of performance. So when we look at our sales, we can decompose the contribution of media, whether it's digital or TV, professional work, promotions, just the category trends, the price, if there is a public relation crisis, competition and distribution. Now, with those marketing models, we've been able to decompose the drivers and understand what volume looks like. Traditionally, this has been a performance verdict. This is what your sales are, and this is why you have performed the way you've performed. Now, what we're doing to move forward to decision-making processes is through actually co-owned forward-looking scenarios. So instead of just looking at what have been the performance of your business, we actually push them to plug in some scenarios where, for example, in this case, what will happen is if I want to grow 5% in my first line, how do my drivers need to perform in order for me to be able to achieve that? I could either get my media spend to increase by 3% and have these other variables be more or less flat, or I can actually choose to increase distribution, have it grow to 3.2%, and then actually I can reach the same sales through different levers. So by forcing them to think on options, you actually get them to make decisions a lot more meaningfully and through data. You can also look at what will happen if you keep your parameters the same, and then your scenario 3 will be you'll be flat at 0%. So if your target is actually to grow 5, you can fool people and have prayer and optimism as we've seen, but you will not get where you want to be, and we know that, and then you need a contingency plan to discuss with your business. So by owning the dependent variables with our marketing colleagues when we build those marketing mix models, by actually workshopping with them the real-time prediction scenarios of when it matters at the moment where decisions are made, we're changing the mindset, and we're moving actually from just data and analytics to actually decision science and forcing a database decision. So that's the movement we've been trying to push with my team. And hence my next question, if I asked you, what do you think is the difference between data science and decision science? It's not an easy one. We've been thinking about it a lot in my group. What would you think makes the difference? So data science is the foundation layer that gets you to to decision science in reality. I mean, I have tried to do a representation, don't take my word for it, it's just one way of looking at it is, I would see decision science as the center of the data per your point, the foundation layer that are below, whether it's the dark side, like all the data requirements that you have, whether it's the analytics techniques, all of that feeding together with what's happening on the business side, which is around the business management rules. So how do you define categories? What are the financial requirements? Things that happen on the back that may not always overt, but are very important to get to decision. And then the business processes and protocols, right? the business cycles, the way the money flows from media to trade to different decisions. So by aggregating all those pieces, the sunny sides, which are the visible one, and the invisible ones, you get to something that is closer to decision science. And by thinking about it like that, and by thinking about the people who make those decisions, you actually get to a point where you force much better decision using the data. Okay. That was the section about managing business stakeholders and getting them to use data sets for decision making. I'm moving to the last section, which is around managing data and analytics team. So I wanted first to highlight this tension about, again, the business context in which I operate, and then the team that I manage and the broader teams that I have to think about. On one hand, I have a business context which is about getting things done now and fast. And on the data science and analytics piece, I have to do a bit now, but I need experimentation. Prove me right. I have to go and convince my management versus I have to tell you how it is. How can this work? Everybody in the business now wants to be a performance manager, right? Whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, you're in regulation, everybody thinks about performance metrics and uses data for that. I think in our world of analytics, data science analytics, there is a much deeper taxonomy of performance skills, though. And people don't always realize that what we call performance science is not what they call performance science. So we're trying to bridge the two. From the business, there is only the front end, right? So the panorama stuff that I showed you, they love it, they see it, but they don't know all the harmonization, governance work that we need behind it to get it organized, whereas we need time and energy to make that happen through the back end. They also think sometimes that modeling will give them their full answer and make decisions, where we know modeling is science and arts. We play with our variables, we adjust our models, etc. all the time. They like simple things, we need some complexity. So we have to deal with that tension very often. They think AI will give them the answer, and what we tell them is not about artificial intelligence, it's about augmented intelligence. It's about you using the AI, but still using your brain to make some of the decisions and allocations. So we have this debate and this tension all the time. What's new is sexy, right? In big companies, the latest thing is just what they want to use, and then we're like, if old works, why not use the old? So we're in this tension all the time. And last but not least, coming back to the introduction, where they think anyway our group has the sexiest job, and they're going to be doing fine, where I can tell you in my group, people want to be continuously relevant. They want to get some more trainings, learn new things all the time. And so this tension in terms of how we manage the group is what actually becomes interesting in how you think about growing people in the context of business and data science analytics, being aware of the two sides. You've probably seen this quote from Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn, right? Where he's been asked, based on all the data sets he has access to, which professional skill is the most in demand right now. Is it coding? He said, no, actually, what's the most in demand right now is written communication, oral communication, team building, and leadership skills. So again, you are the sexiest job of the 21st century, but if you don't have those soft skills that go with it, this learning agility and this people centricity that gets you to have those skills, you will be missing a trick in your careers as you grow. I wanted just to ask you in terms of, if I were to ask you now, what would be the expectations you would have from an employer? What would make your days at work tolerable? What do you think matters most? I'll tell you what I think matters based on my experience again with my team. The first one is you want a relatable purpose, something that you believe in as you think about your next job, wherever it's going to be, something that is a bit bigger so that your contribution is bigger than just what it is, something that makes you think I'm working for something big. You would think an environment where the what and the how both matter equally, because you can actually do a lot of activity if you don't do it in a connected way, in a way that is respectful and human, you may lose actually the benefit of all the great work that you do. For your point, having space, time, and freedom, but having accountability at the same time. So you, again, when you think about your careers and how you're going to grow, you want to think about the two. A concept that I like a lot as well is this concept of forward feeding. forward feeding is in big companies in particular, but probably in all companies you have review system where people talk about your performance. What I think matters is not to look at what you have done in the past, but how you have done in the past will impact the future. So what you have to think about, what's the learning from that in terms of your upcoming objectives and how you can use it to think about it in a relevant way in your next business cycle and in your next performance cycle. So forward feeding and looking for that, I think, is very important. Linked to that about a little bit is this notion of obviously employment security is gone. We all know that. The jobs for life don't exist anymore. I'm probably the only dinosaur being 21 years in the same company. But what matters is actually employability security. So being in a context where you know you will learn all the time. So you'll have opportunities to learn new techniques, new approaches, have broader assignments, have differentiated assignments, so that your relevance, and again back to the beginning of the conversation, is always being put up to date. And then the last piece is around the trust intangibles, right? So again, when you think about the company you'll be working with is, do you have the sense that you'll be backed by the people who will manage you? Do you have a sense that you will be in confidence to tell things the way they are? And that's more probably a sense thing versus another thing. So that would be, again, my advice to you as you think about the jobs you'll be looking for and how to look for them. So that's what I had for you today. I am pretty much on time for 10 more minutes of questions and hearing back from you what you would like to know about either the company or the work we do and how it fits with your context.